My mother didn't whisper. She didn't hesitate. She didn't even look ashamed. She just folded a napkin on her lap, breathed in once, and said, "We sold your inheritance to pay your brother's debt." Just like that. Calm, clean, final. My brother, Cole, leaned back in his chair like he'd just won something. He lifted his glass, smirked, and said, "You'll thank us someday." Dad stared at the salt shaker like it held the answers to every bad choice he'd ever made. But me, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't ask how they could do this, how they could take the one thing my grandmother meant for me alone. I set my fork down gently, the sound sharper than any shout, and said one word that cut straight through the air. Repay. And in that moment, I watched something shift. Not in me. In them. Like they suddenly realized I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't the quiet kid who stayed out of the way, who let things happen, who let people take. Before I go any further, are you still with me? My name is Avery, 23, stubborn when I need to be, and apparently the only person in my family who understands what the word promise actually means. For most of my life, I believed our home was stable, predictable, safe in that suburban, lawn-mowed, porch-light glow kind of way. The kind where neighbors wave, dads wash their cars on weekends, and moms pretend everything is perfectly organized. But here, that's what nobody tells you. Even the nicest houses have cracks. And sometimes the cracks start small, so small you don't notice them until everything you trusted caves in. For me, the cracks always started with Cole. He was 5 years older, golden boy of the family, the he just needs time project my parents built their lives around. When he wrecked his car at 19, they said he was finding himself. When he dropped out of college, they said traditional school isn't for everyone. When he maxed out credit cards, they said he deserves a fresh start. And when he made the one mistake nobody could clean up, a massive gambling debt. Apparently, the solution was me. My inheritance. My future. Everything my grandmother had saved for me since the day I was born, gone in one transaction, signed away behind my back without a single conversation. And the worst part, they looked at me like I should understand. Like I should clap for them. Like I should be proud they saved the family. But the thing about betrayal is, it's never the moment you hear the truth that destroys you. It's all the moments after, when you realize the truth had been there all along. Waiting. After dinner, I drove home in silence. My hands were steady on the wheel, steady in a way they shouldn't have been. Shock feels like calm sometimes. It's the dangerous kind of calm, the kind that feels like the floor has disappeared, but you're still standing anyway. I kept replaying that single word in my head. Repay. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just a line in the sand. They didn't believe me. I saw it in their faces. Avery won't do anything. Avery will move on. Avery always forgives. But they were wrong. Because that night, lying awake in the dark, I realized something I'd never allowed myself to think. They didn't protect me. They didn't choose me. They didn't even consider me. And once a family shows you what you are to them, you don't forget it. You don't forgive it. You repay it. And that was the beginning. The moment everything in my life stopped being something they controlled and started becoming something I would take back. Piece by piece. Quietly. Perfectly. I woke the next morning to a notification buzzing on my phone. For a second, half asleep, I thought maybe it was my parents. Maybe they'd realized how outrageous it all was. Maybe they wanted to apologize. But no, it was from the bank. A late payment alert tied to my name. I sat up instantly, heart thudding. I didn't recognize the account number, didn't recognize the payment, didn't recognize anything. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Then the truth settled over me like cold water. They hadn't just taken my inheritance. They de-used my information, my identity, my name. Quietly, confidently, as if they assumed I'd never check. As if they believed I'd never question them. My grandmother always told me, Avery, trust is a currency. Give it only to those who earn it. Well, apparently I'd given mine to family, running an entire economy off of it. I spent the next hour tracking numbers, statements, withdrawals, signatures. That's when I saw it. A Cossin line with my name on it. Except the signature wasn't mine. My stomach dropped so sharply it felt like falling. I replayed every moment from the last year. The times Mom helped with my mail. The times Dad just needed my social security card for taxes. The times Cole asked innocent questions about my bank app. It all made sense now. They hadn't made a mistake. They made a decision. That afternoon, I drove to their house. Mom was in the kitchen chopping peppers like nothing was wrong. Dad sat at the table scrolling his phone. Cole lounged on the couch, the picture of someone who had never faced consequences a day in his life. I placed the printed bank statements on the counter. Mom barely glanced up. "What's this?" "A crime," I said quietly. Cole snorted. "Oh, relax." Dad sighed the way he always sighed, like conflict was an inconvenience, like honesty was exhausting. "I didn't sign these," I said, tapping the forged signature. Mom's voice went sharp. "Avery, don't start." "I'm not starting anything. You did." She slammed the knife down. "We were trying to help your brother." "You helped him with my future," I said, hands shaking but controlled. Cole rolled his eyes. "I'm family. That money wasn't just yours." "Yes," I said, cutting him off. "It was." Mom crossed her arms. "Cole needed support. You're young. You'll be fine." There it was. The sentence that had excused everything for the last decade. "You're young. You'll adjust. You can wait." I took a deep breath. I'm done being the one who waits. Dad finally spoke. "Avery, don't make this dramatic." "Identity theft is dramatic," I said coldly. "Fraud is dramatic." Mom paled. "You wouldn't report us." I tilted my head. "Why? Because I'm the easy one." The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Heavy with truths they didn't expect me to uncover. I gathered the papers and slid them back into my folder. "If you want to fix this," I said, "you'll meet me tomorrow at the attorney's office, all of you." Cole scoffed. "Why would we go to some lawyer?" Dad rubbed his forehead. "Avery, we don't need legal drama." I opened the door. "You already created it," I said. "I'm just finishing it." And then I walked out, letting the door ease shut behind me. My hands were shaking, but my steps were steady. Because for the first time, I wasn't confronting them as the girl they depended on. I was confronting them as the woman they underestimated. And that was their biggest mistake. I barely slept that night. Not from fear. That part of me burned out the moment I saw the forged signature. But from clarity. Clear like cold water. Clear like a room where every object is finally in its true place. Clear like realizing the people who raised you never really saw you at all. By morning, the decision wasn't a question. It was a quiet certainty sitting in my chest. This ends now. I arrived at the attorney's office early. The waiting room smelled like lavender and warm paper. Soft classical music played, the kind that sounds peaceful until you realize you're seconds away from blowing up the only version of family you've ever had. My attorney, Ms. Harper, met me at the door. A sharp woman in her 40s, with eyes that read everything you didn't say. "You ready?" she asked. I nodded, more than ready. She studied me for a second, then smiled. "Good, because families like this, they count on the quiet ones staying quiet." That one sentence felt like being seen for the first time. At 2:14 p.m., the door opened. Mom walked in first, trying to look composed but her eyes giving away the fear. Dad followed, avoiding my gaze like the floor had suddenly become fascinating. Cole came last, shoulders back, wearing that careless superiority like a tailored coat. He smirked when he saw me. "You really dragged us to a lawyer, for some money you weren't even using." My jaw tightened. Miss Harper didn't flinch. "Please sit," she said coolly. They did, reluctantly, like they were being dragged into adulthood for the first time. Ms. Harper folded her hands. "Before we begin, I want to be clear. This is not a criminal meeting, yet. Avery requested this to give the family a chance to resolve matters privately." Mom stiffened. "We haven't done anything illegal." "Using someone's identity to sign financial documents," Ms. Harper said, "is illegal." Mom swallowed. Cole leaned back in his chair. "Whatever. If she wants the money back, we'll figure something out." Ms. Harper raised an eyebrow. "The money is only part of the issue. There's also the loan placed under Avery's name, which damaged her credit score, and the forged signature, and the unauthorized access to her personal financial information." Dad finally looked up. "We were trying to help your brother." "There are legal ways to do that," Ms. Harper said evenly. "This was not one of them." Cole's voice snapped. "Oh, come on, you act like she's some victim." "Yes," I said quietly, "I am." The room froze. It was the first time I'd ever said it out loud. Mom blinked. "Avery." "No," I said, voice steady. "You took advantage of me. You assumed I'd understand. You assumed I'd recover. You assumed I'd forgive you without question." They all stared at me like I'd suddenly changed shape. I hadn't. They just never bothered to see me clearly. Ms. Harper slid a folder in front of them. "These are the documents," she said. "The statements, forged signature, and loan information. We will be filing a dispute with the credit agencies and banks, and the debt will be transferred out of Avery's name." Cole shot upright. "Transferred where?" "Onto the person who benefited," she replied. Silence. Mom looked at Cole. Dad looked at Cole. Even Cole looked at Cole. Like the realization was finally cracking through the arrogance. "This is insane," he whispered. "You're ruining my life over one loan." "No," I said. "You ruined my future. I'm just reclaiming it." Mom suddenly broke. Tears filled her eyes. "Avery, we were wrong. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you, not used you." Dad's voice trembled. "We'll fix this, all of it." Cole said nothing. For the first time in years, he didn't have words. Miss Harper nodded toward me. "Your daughter will not pursue charges, if everything is corrected immediately." The room exhaled, relief, fear, guilt all tangled together. When the meeting ended, Mom tried to hug me. I stepped back. "We're not there yet," I said softly. Her face crumpled. I didn't look away. Because forgiveness is a door. And they had not earned the key. I walked out of that office, lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because they apologized, but because I didn't need their apology to move forward. I had my own beginning now. And it was finally mine. The morning after the attorney meeting felt strangely calm, like the world had paused just long enough for me to breathe again. The air outside my apartment was cool, a little sharp, the kind of air that wakes you up from the inside. I stood there for a moment, just letting it settle through me. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running behind my own life. My phone buzzed. One message. From Dad. "We're taking care of the loan today." Short. Stiff. Careful. The kind of message someone sends when they finally realize the person they underestimated now holds all the leverage. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because this was the first boundary I'd ever built. And I wasn't breaking it for a man who broke my trust with a pen stroke. I went about my day like any other. Coffee, bus, work, typing emails, answering calls. But everything felt different now, like I was stepping into a version of myself I had only imagined before. At lunch, I opened my banking app, something I had avoided for months. And there it was. The loan under my name had vanished. Removed. Corrected. Transferred. My credit score bounced up in real time, like someone had lifted bricks off its back. I stared at the numbers, not smiling, not crying. Just absorbing the quiet satisfaction of justice, finally shifting in my direction. I wasn't just recovering. I was reclaiming. That evening, I visited Jade. The moment she saw me, she raised an eyebrow. "You look different," she said. "Different how?" She set her drink down, like someone who finally stopped apologizing for existing. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "I did something big," I said. She grinned. "You did something necessary." We sat on her couch, eating cheap takeout, watching some terrible reality show. And for the first time in months, I felt the kind of peace that doesn't require explanation. But peace doesn't last long when you grew up in a family where guilt moves like a second language. The next day, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. "Mom." Her name flashed across the screen like a warning sign. I watched it ring until it stopped. A minute later, it rang again. And again. By the fourth time, she left a voicemail. I didn't listen. Not immediately. Not because I didn't care, but because caring had cost me years of my life. Hours later, when I finally pressed play, her voice came through trembling. "Avery, we fixed it. Everything. Your father talked to the bank. The loan is off your account. Your score is back. Everything is fine now. So please, please call me back. We're family. We need to move past this." Move past this. Like it was a misunderstanding. Not a betrayal. Not a choice they made, because they assumed my dreams were flexible currency they could spend. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't owe her a response. That evening, I quietly gathered every document I'd printed, every statement, every screenshot, and placed them into a new folder. Not as evidence now, but as a reminder. A reminder of who I could become when I finally stopped letting my family dictate the limits of my future. I sat on the edge of my bed and opened my laptop. College applications. Deadlines. Essays. My future. I typed for hours, not stopping, not hesitating. Every word poured out clean, honest, unfiltered. By the time I hit save, something inside me settled. I wasn't the girl with a stolen future anymore. I was a woman building one. And somewhere in that quiet shift, I realized something important. Consequences don't always come in storms. Sometimes they come in silence. Sometimes the loudest revenge is becoming someone they can never control again. I thought the attorney meeting would be the end of it. That once the loan was removed and my credit restored, the dust would settle and everyone would retreat to their corners to lick their wounds. But guilt has a funny way of shifting the ground under people who have spent years convincing themselves they were right. 3 days after everything was fixed, Mom showed up at my apartment. No call. No warning. Just a knock, soft at first, then heavier, like she was trying to force her way into my day the same way she used to force her decisions into my life. I froze when I saw her through the peephole. Her eyes were red, her shoulders slumped, her hands clutching a purse like it was a life raft. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. For a moment, I felt that old instinct rise, the one that always told me to comfort her, smooth things over, make things easier for everyone but myself. But I didn't open the door. Not right away. I let myself breathe. Let the boundary settle. Then, finally, I unlocked it. She stepped inside like she already knew the apartment, even though she had never been here. She looked around quietly, her gaze landing on the cheap furniture, the plain kitchen, the sunlight spilling across the floor. Her voice cracked, "You're living here." There it was. The unspoken judgment. The subtle disappointment. I didn't react. "This is my home," I said. "It's mine." Mom swallowed. "Avery, we never meant to hurt you. You have to know that." "I know what you meant to do," I said. "And what you didn't mean to do. Those aren't the same thing." She sank onto my couch, shoulders trembling. "Your brother, he's struggling. He said you embarrassed him in front of the lawyer." I almost laughed. "Embarrassed him?" "He forged my signature," I said. "He used my identity, he drained my future, and he feels embarrassed." Mom covered her face. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize how deep this went. I didn't know he—" "Yes," I cut in. "You did." She froze. "You knew because I told you," I said, voice steady but soft. "I told you something was wrong with the account. I told you I was worried about the money. I told you my fund mattered to me." She shook her head. "We thought you'd understand." "I did," I said. "I understood exactly what you were saying, that my future was optional and his was mandatory." A long silence stretched between us. Then she whispered, "I don't know how to fix this, Avery." "You can't," I said. "Not all at once." She looked up slowly, eyes glassy. "So what do you want from us?" It was the first time she'd ever asked me that. Not what I could handle. Not what I could tolerate. But what I wanted. For a moment, I didn't know how to answer. My whole life had been shaped by bending around their choices. I finally said, "I want space, I want time, and I want you to understand that forgiveness is not the same as forgetfulness." She wiped her cheeks. "Does this mean you don't want us in your life anymore?" "I want a family," I said, "not a hierarchy." Her breath caught. "Avery, I miss you." I nodded. "I miss who we used to be, but that wasn't real. Not really. Not if it only worked as long as I stayed small." She looked devastated, not performative, not dramatic, genuinely devastated. "I'll give you space," she whispered. "Just don't give up on us completely." I walked her to the door. "I'm not giving up," I said. "I'm growing up, there's a difference." Mom paused at the threshold, like she wanted to say something else. But she didn't. She walked away quietly, almost carefully, as if afraid any sudden movement would shatter what was left between us. I closed the door behind her. And for the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt like clarity. It felt like choosing myself. It felt like the beginning of a life where I wasn't defined by what my family took, but by what I finally decided to build. For the next week, silence settled over everything. Not the sharp, suffocating silence that follows a fight. Not the cold silence that hides resentment. This was a different silence. The kind that feels like a room after a storm, where everything is still in place. But nothing is the same. I went to work. I cooked simple meals. I slept without waking up to panic. I focused on college applications. Drafting essays, refining paragraphs, rewriting sentences until they finally felt like me. Every night, I'd close my laptop, feeling something unfamiliar spreading in my chest. Hope. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just a steady, quiet pulse. But while I was moving forward, my family was unraveling. It started with Dad. He called once. Not to argue, not to demand forgiveness, but to say something short and unexpected. "Avery, you were right." His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. He told me he'd spent the last few days facing the truth he'd been avoiding for years. That protecting peace, by enabling Cole, had destroyed every boundary in our family. He said Mom cried for 2 straight days. He said Cole was furious, blaming everyone except himself. He said the house felt wrong, like something important was missing. I didn't say I knew what was missing. Me. I just listened. When he finished, he whispered, "Take your time, we'll be here when you're ready." It was the exact opposite of every response I expected. And that somehow made it hit even harder. But guilt is a strange creature. It softens some people. It corrodes others. Cole chose corrosion. On Friday night, my phone lit up with his name. I almost didn't answer. But something in me said to hear him out. The moment I picked up, his voice exploded through the line. You ruined everything. I didn't flinch. Cole. No, I can't believe Mom and Dad are taking your side like you're some victim. I needed that money. I needed support. You needed accountability, I said quietly. You're so selfish, he snapped. You could have waited, you always could have waited. There it was again. The family anthem. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me like an old song that no longer hurt. Cole, I said, I'm not your safety net anymore. You'll have to stand on your own now. He went silent. A stunned, breathless silence. Then he hung up. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just the sound of someone realizing the world doesn't bend for them anymore. The next day, I received a message from Mom. A photo of Cole, standing in the driveway, suitcases at his feet. Angry, lost, unwilling to look at the camera. Underneath, one sentence. He moved out. I stared at the picture for a long moment. Not with satisfaction. Not with revenge. But with clarity. This is what happens when consequences finally catch up to someone who has never faced them before. Later that evening, Jade came over with 2 iced coffees and a look that told me she already knew something happened. So, she said, hopping onto my couch, you going to tell me why your family group chat looks like a crime scene? I laughed for the first time in weeks. A lot changed, I said. No, she corrected gently. You changed. She wasn't wrong. Choosing myself didn't just shift my future. It shifted the entire gravitational pull of my family. I wasn't orbiting them anymore. They were learning to orbit the truth. At night, I sat at my tiny desk, reading through the last draft of my application essay. I wrote about resilience, about rebuilding, about learning that sometimes the people who love you the most are the ones who expect you to shrink so they can shine, and that the bravest thing you can do is step into your own light anyway. When I clicked submit, it didn't feel like sending an application. It felt like reclaiming a lifetime. And for the first time in years, I went to sleep without fear tapping at the edges of my mind. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood something. You don't need to be loud to change your life. You just need to stop whispering your worth. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence, shifting ground, and a new kind of calm I didn't know I'd been starving for. College confirmations trickled into my inbox. Application received. Review in progress. Thank you for your submission. Small steps. Barely noticeable. But each one felt like a brick laid in the foundation of a life I was finally building myself. Then, on a rainy Thursday morning, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived. Not a text. Not an email. Not a voicemail filled with shaky guilt. A handwritten letter. From Dad. It was short, but it held more honesty than every conversation from the last 10 years. Avery, you were right to walk away. We raised you to be responsible, and then punished you for being the only one who was. I'm proud of you. Take all the time you need. We'll wait. No excuses. No begging. Just truth. Mom wrote a separate one. Hers longer, trembled with regret, filled with attempts to explain something that couldn't be justified. But the part that stood out wasn't the apology. It was this. I never realized how much we leaned on you, and how little we offered back. She finally saw the thing I'd spent my whole life trying not to name. I wasn't the daughter. I was the safety net. The backup plan. The second choice. And finally, the breaking point that forced them to see me. But Cole, he didn't write. Not for days. Not for a week. Not for two. Until one night, my phone buzzed with a message so out of character it made me reread it twice. I'm sorry. Just 2 words. Then another message. I thought the world owed me everything. I thought you'd always carry the weight for me. I was wrong. And then, I'm trying to fix myself. Not for you. For me. I sat on the edge of my bed, reading those messages in the glow of my bedside lamp, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the opening of a door I didn't think would ever exist again. He wasn't asking me to come back. He wasn't demanding comfort. He wasn't blaming anyone. For the first time, he was standing alone. And that was the only apology that mattered. The next morning, I walked to the cafe near my apartment, bought a coffee, and sat by the window as rain streaked down the glass. Life suddenly felt wide. Open. Unscripted. Not defined by what I'd lost, but by what I was about to claim. My phone buzzed. A new email. From one of the colleges. I stared at it for a long moment, breath caught somewhere between fear and hope. Then I opened it. We are pleased to inform you. The rest of the words blurred for a moment. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't jump from my chair. I just let myself exhale. A long, shaky breath I think I'd been holding since the day my mother said the words. We used your college fund. And now the future that was stolen from me was finally coming back. Not through revenge. Not through anger. But through choosing myself. I walked home slowly, the acceptance letter glowing on my screen. And when I reached my apartment door, something inside me settled. This story didn't end with my family losing something. It ended with me finding myself. I stood in the middle of my small living room, cheap furniture, thrifted curtains, chipped mug on the counter, and felt more grounded than I ever had in that big house I used to call home. Because this space, this life, this future, it was mine. Not borrowed. Not inherited. Not sacrificed for someone else's comfort. Mine. And when I finally sat down and typed a message back to my mother, not long, not emotional, just honest. I'm healing. I'll reach out when I'm ready. I realized something. Revenge wasn't the ending. Freedom was.